I'll tell you what, Drew Russell, this is the biggest weekend in Big 12 history as far as I'm concerned. 126 different outcomes this weekend can determine who we see in Arlington next weekend. I mean, it doesn't get any more Big 12 than that.
126 is an absurd
126. That's
number.
crazy.
Like, that is a legitimately insane number, but a rightful number considering how ridiculous this season has been.
Well, I mean, you think about it like this: in the ACC, there's 0 scenarios. In the Big Ten, there's 1 scenario or 1 outcome. In the Pac-12, there's probably, I don't know, 2 outcomes, 3 outcomes maybe.
Yeah.
Am I missing any other conference? The SEC has 0 outcomes.
Yep.
The Big 12 has 126.
It's incredible. But again, I mean, just the balance of the league this year and how nobody seems to want to grab the bull by the horns outside of, I guess, Texas, and even they could still find a way to falter. I mean, is crazy. I mean, the amount of outcomes, Brandon, is fantastic. It's great for the league, and it creates a lot of interest going into this Thanksgiving weekend.
No kidding. And this is typically usually supposed to be like the peak of college football. You get the Michigan Ohio State game. You get all these great rivalries, and then just to throw on top of that, just the madness going on in Middle America in the Big 12 Conference. You couldn't chalk it up any bit better than that.
No, you can't. And I mean, this season we were talking about last week, just the absurdity of the league. Like, just a week ago, we were reading out scenarios where if every Big 12 home team last week and then every away team this week won out, we were going to have an Iowa State, Texas Tech Big 12 championship game, which would have been just sheer chaos. So that tells you where this league has been this year. And we've still got some really intriguing teams that kind of have to iron some things out this coming week, because you look at both Oklahoma teams, you have Texas, you have Kansas State. There's, as you mentioned, so many different possibilities to this. And for Brent Yormark and the Big 12 as a whole, they've got to be very pleased just how this season has played out, because from just a genuine, like, let's keep people on the edge of their seat in an entertainment business, Big 12 has really delivered on its product, I feel, for the majority of the year.
You're absolutely right. And let's kind of take a look at what some of these scenarios are, because there's still, it's crazy how half the league is still involved in it. Obviously, you have, some favorites and whatnot, but the fact that half the league is still alive is incredible content here. So we'll kind of get into it here. Let me cut this down here a little bit. That's not what I wanted to do. This is fine. But so it all starts on Friday night, because that's when Texas and Texas Tech play. So if Texas wins, they clinch a berth on Friday. And then the following scenarios apply around the Big 12. Then if Oklahoma State beats BYU, then it's Oklahoma State. So those two teams are the teams that control their destiny, in Texas and Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma defeats TCU on Friday, and that's followed by a Texas win and an Oklahoma State loss, then the Sooners are back in the Big 12 championship as a 2 seed. So we get a Red River showdown once again, which I feel like as Big 12 purists, it's kind of worst case scenario. And then if Kansas State defeats Iowa State on Saturday, following a Texas win and a TCU win, then that's the path for Kansas. That's the easiest path, I would say, for Kansas State to get back in and involved in Texas. And so we'll kind of go through that bit before it gets real off the walls here if Texas loses on Friday. But it seems like Oklahoma State's got the inside edge, but we also said that just a couple weeks ago when they played UCF.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I think we've had about what feels like 100 different narratives this last month of like a team that you and I have felt strongly about, and then they go lay an egg the next week, or a team that we potentially wrote off all of a sudden turns it around and shows some life for a week or two. And I don't expect this weekend to be any different. I mean, for Texas as a whole, they've got to be feeling pretty good about themselves to survive on the road back-to-back weeks against TCU, then go to a pretty raucous environment in Ames last Saturday and beat Iowa State. On paper, they're at home. They should be able to take care of business against Texas Tech. But Texas Tech all of a sudden is showing some life on their side as well. So who knows? Like, honestly, at this point, who on earth knows? I know that for I'm sure Big 12, just the board, and for all the other schools, sure they're praying they don't get a Texas Oklahoma, matchup in the Big 12 championship. If you're Texas, that's who I'd want is Oklahoma to try to avenge that loss to make a stronger case in the college football playoff. But it's really interesting to see they were still figuring out these rules, Brandon. Like they were still trying to like make sure everything was clarified in the last couple days. So I think we finally have it. This looks like a pretty good written word out of the conference themselves, but I was concerned, Brandon. You and I were
Yeah.
we were ready to step in and try to save the day. We were ready to go to Dallas and protest if needed.
And I'm still not 100% sure on what the outcome of that clarification was, because I don't think they changed anything, but
They
it
put
feels
words on
like,
a paper, Brandon, so it
yeah,
looked official to me. They got
yeah,
me. I'm a sucker. I saw words and I said, that looks good to me, Big 12.
yeah. I feel like if they had changed anything objectively, we would have heard about it from Cyclone Larry. He's pretty against it, but so that's kind of the cleanest path is if
Mhm.
Texas takes care of business on Friday, and then it's between those three teams who really have that kind of outside shot. Now, if Texas were to lose on Friday to Texas Tech, which we're all rooting for a myriad of reasons, horns down,
Mm,
especially after the last couple of weeks where I kind of
mhm,
got up for him. Like, let's see, this is the game. Kansas State's got
mhm,
him. Defending Big 12 champs going to go take him down, and then you have that night game in Fort Worth, and then a night game in Ames, and now another night game in Lubbock.
mhm.
Oh, they might just run out of gas. Hopefully, if that happens, then we go into Saturday with no spots filled in the Big 12 championship games. Texas can still go in there if two of the three teams, including Kansas State, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma State, lose. So if just two of those teams lose, that opens up the door for Texas to get in even with a loss. Now, if Texas loses on Friday and two or three of those teams win, again, that's Kansas State, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, then there will be three or four teams tied for both championship berths. Multiple scenarios exist, and that's where things. I mean, that's where the meat really gets into.
How happy is like each conference? I'm sure has like those schedule the people that put together the schedules, and they have like those number crunchers in the back that are like they're in charge of this. How awful is this for them? Like they're trying to maybe just enjoy like a Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah,
You mentioned like the SEC, ACC, they're just kind of cruising. Those are just like they don't have to worry about tiebreakers. Conference, they can put their feet up over the weekend, say, "Boy, isn't college sports awesome?" And the Big 12 like rule tie committee, they're thinking, "Oh man, this isn't fun." Like they're gonna deal with angry fan bases, especially if this gets really murky. And again, the way this conference season has gone, why wouldn't it? We're in murkiness. We got to embrace it at this point.
well, and the Big 12 up until this year with the expansion of the new four teams has really been pretty clear cut. You play every team in your conference, so every team has a head-to-head tiebreaker over everybody, one way or the other. And then I guess unless you get to a point where it's like 3 2 loss teams or 3 1 loss teams at the top, and then you kind of go into that. But just the fact that you could have 3 or 4 teams tied for both championship spots. It's 4 teams for 2 spots. I
Mhm.
mean, it doesn't get any better than that. But you're absolutely right. It is as murky as it gets, and that's yeah. You don't prepare for that. Obviously, they didn't prepare for this, and it's incredible that it's come down. And of course, it's so funny that it's the Big 12 that has this debacle, not the Big 10 or the SEC, but the Big 12, which is just so on brand. I feel like I got to hit that point home. It's so on brand for this conference.
Like, I mean, it's eerily similar. I remember a podcast. This was a few months ago, Brandon, where we were talking about just Big 12 history, and it has that similar vibe to that first year when they went with the one true champion model, and they were like, we're not going to have a conference championship game. We're determining everything in the regular season. And then TCU and Baylor were tied at 8-1. Both had great seasons, 11-1 each. And the Big 12, instead of submitting like one conference champion, which in my opinion should have been Baylor, just because they won the head to head over
Mhm.
TCU. But they didn't. They submitted both as co-conference champions, and then they were left out of the college football playoff, the first one, as the 5 and 6 seeds. And it weirdly I mean, the Big 12 looked hyper incompetent during that time. And even though I think they're on much better leadership ground now, this still isn't a great look for the conference that they can't that there's still like a little bit of unclarity if there is just nothing but unfiltered chaos.
You're absolutely right. So it looks like that we're going to get another slate of scenarios at the conclusions of Friday's games. So we could. So Texas is the only one who can lock up a spot on Friday because also TCU and Oklahoma play on Friday. So Texas could lock up, but yeah, like I said, we're rooting. I mean, one, we're rooting against Texas always, horns down, but also we're rooting just for the chaos because it really gets murky if they lose, and it gets a little bit clearer if Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Kansas State all lose, because then that opens up the back door again for Texas, and they'll slide in, and then whoever wins out of those three teams, if any, get in. But if those teams can just hang on, Texas loses, I mean, that's outstanding for me. And like I said, there's 126 different outcomes possible from this fiasco, which I would love to really exercise how crazy those scenarios can be.